Sorry. So look.
Planet, did you say?
No, I was in another space. And I thought I was on with you guys, but I wasn't. So look, just welcome everybody again. 2 o'clock. Well, now it's past that, and I understand we have Diane Connors.
I think I'm here.
Diane, so you're the first submitter up, if that's all right?
Yep, that's great. Thank you.
Far away. And can I just remind people that Diane is page 231 of the hard copy and page 243 of the online copy. So thank you, Diane.
Thank you, Mayor Sandra, and to the councillors. So you've got my written submission, so take that as read. So I just want to add a few more things in here and then leave it for you to get on with your daunting task of trying to get this annual plan through. So firstly, the consultation document tried to explain some of the reasons why we've got this 9 point something rather increase in rates. I would question some of the reasonings that have been put in there, particularly number 6, that stated that the rates increase over the last 10 years have not kept up with inflation. I did my own research on this through a Burls report and the local government cost index, and I could only find only 2 years in the last 10 that the TCDC rates increase has been lower than the LGCI. So I don't understand where that's thinking's coming from, but maybe I've misread something. Also number 3, that actually delivering on the CapEx should not be an excuse for increased rates. When capital works are budgeted for, the operating budget should be adjusted not only to account for the operating cost of owning this new asset, but also the financial costs such as the interest on any loans and also depreciation. I hope that the accounting practices that have these fundamental practices in place, obviously it's better to budget for these and not need them than to assume that we're not going to deliver on what you've promised the ratepayers. I have some concern also in the large scale increase in expenditure listed in your pie chart under activities, council activities. There is a category there called council, and I've heard other people mention it this morning. That figure is now showing at this stage at 21% of our budgeted expenditure. In 2015 long-term plan, a pie graph showing the same sort of thing only came up with 8.97, so that's less than 9%, and now that figure is showing as 21%. So this is things like the consultation document explains it includes the customer service, your IT, economic development. So I would really ask the councillors to have a close look at that particular activity. I can't really understand where that has got blown out so much that it's now more than twice as much it was in an LTP a few years ago. So the consultation document does explain that there have been significant cost increases in the core services and solid waste, and yet the costs for the council using that pie graph is showing that it's still more than road and footpaths and solid waste combined. So here's 2 of our bigger core services, and yet this council activity is even more than both of them put together. So I would suggest that a line by line going through the budget with that and trying to figure out where that blowout has gone. Also, we need to relook at the OPEX budgets in general, as has been discussed before, with all the positions that have been doubled up in senior management levels and the dissolving of many roles in the community board level, particularly in Thames over in recent years. There should have been some savings. So I don't understand why that has got to where it is. We know that there have been senior management roles that have been combined over the years that should be showing some sort of savings in that activity then, instead of having it double. Next thing is I have this particularly to the Thames councillors. So I have concerns about some CapEx projects that are on the Thames area that have been removed from this annual plan budget. I ask that you carefully check those projects that have been either cancelled or deferred, particularly those ones that have had interested parties that have looked at external funding. And the two examples I will give the Thames councillors is the CCTV expansion. And I believe the Thames Business Association has done some fundraising for that. And the other one is the Rhodes Park Grandstand project. And I believe that's part of a group of projects that Active Thames have been very active working on for many, many years, raising sponsorship for. So I just urge you to go back and check on those projects and make sure that those interested parties have been consulted with, and that any delaying or deferring or cancelling of those projects is not going to jeopardise our ability to access external funding, which could help with those CapEx projects when they come to fruition. As you see, I've talked about a little bit about the domestic tourism, and obviously the COVID-19 is going to have a major impact on our tourism, and it is one of our core industries in the Coromandel. I do suggest that we refocus on regional and domestic, and I see through the reports that Destination Coromandel has already started doing that, which is great. I also suggest that we have a look at some of the budgets and maybe have to look at what has to be done with the eyesights and the information centres. Another area that you could focus on for help with the tourism, because every region, every RTO is going to be fighting for that local tourism budget dollar at the moment and in the near future. So I think that going back and refocusing on our events marketing and our budget for major events might be a good time to review that. It's been a wee while since that criteria has been looked at, and it has been proven that holding events helps to draw that domestic market. So I would urge the council to go back and review the criteria for that major events fund. It hasn't been spent for the last few years. It has been accessed, but there's been retained earnings for the last few years. So maybe we just need to have a look at that pool of money, and this is a good time to refocus on having some great events that will attract our domestic market back to the Coromandel on the off-peak season. Obviously, things have changed significantly since the draft annual plan was put out, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that the reforecasted financial statement adjusted for the lockdown scenarios did not really reflect what's actually occurred, and that's through no fault of your own. You weren't sure what was going to happen. The solid waste collection was changed. We've ended up with less collections. So hopefully there's been some savings in there, but it's almost going to be back to the drawing board with this budget, unfortunately, because of the changes that have happened since COVID-19 and our lockdown. So I know that it's a really difficult time for you. I wish you all the best with what you've got to do. It's a very trying task, but I do urge you to think carefully about the rates increase. That's just not palatable to a lot of people in our peninsula at the moment. We, in particular in Thames, have a lot of people on fixed incomes, lower incomes, people employed in the hospitality and tourism industry throughout the peninsula who are really going to be struggling. So I urge you to do whatever you can to bring that rate back down. I stick to the core, defer capital expenditure where you can, refocus the tourism dollar, and encourage local spend like you've been doing. So good luck, everybody, and that's my feedback for now.
Thank you.
Well done. Thank you very much, Diane. So I'll just now ask if anybody's got any questions of Diane. I don't know why that ping was there. So no,
very good submission, and
Just take a bell.
it's
think
Terry.
about and
Terry.
write down. So thank you, Diane. That was a very good submission. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from anyone? There being none, thank you, Diane. Really appreciate you rescheduling that time. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you. Can I just say one more thing, Sandra? Yep, sorry.
Do you want to table the extra that you put in? Because it wasn't in your original submission.
Yeah, I can send something through later. Yep, that's fine. Just another question that was asked of some other submitters this morning. I heard people asking about the community grants and whether they thought that that should be something that council should be scrapping or prioritising or decreasing. So just on that question, I think it is important that we keep thinking about the social cohesiveness of our communities, the quality of life. This has been a really difficult time for many people, financially, also emotionally, socially. And I think it'd be really good to do what some of the other submitters have talked about this morning, which is going back and refocusing on what your core values are as a council. And I remember that the vision there talks about good community citizen through support of community organisations, economic development, and the protection of our environment. So I urge you to keep that in mind, that it's not just about the core infrastructure, but that for people to have a good quality of life, that includes being able to have sports and recreation and arts. And I hope that you still keep some focus on that, because there's going to be really difficult for those organisations out there to be able to get funding from other external funders in the near future. So we hope that you as a council will get in there and make sure that those not-for-profit organisations, sports, recreation, arts are supported in the short term.
Thank you, Diane. And so if you can send that additional information too, that would be good.
Will do.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
Thanks.
Right. Now, Milan Lukic.
Yep, I'm figuring it out. Give me a second.
Page 255 of the hard copy, page 267 of the online. Milan, welcome. You have the video.
Thank you very much, Sandra. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Milan Lukic, and I'm currently the chairman of the Mercury Bay Business Association. And yep, thank you for the opportunity to speak to our submission on the proposed rates increase. A number of people over the next couple of days are going to pick very specifics from the draft annual plan to speak on, and I'm sure repetitively. So my intention today is just to speak a bit more broadly on behalf of our members. The Mercury Bay Business Association represents almost 200 businesses. It's a diverse cross-section of our community, including sole traders, medium to large businesses, some with over 30 employees, and now includes 46 new members who have just recently joined as a result of the current nationwide lockdown and the critical disruption that this has caused to our local economy and their livelihood. I'm confident you'll agree we are currently in unprecedented times, which requires unprecedented measures from all areas of the community to ensure the safe, healthy recovery and revitalization of our economic infrastructure. In fact, anything less would be an injustice to the looming economic crisis with no predictable endpoint at this time. The foundation for our local economy is now fundamentally based on domestic and international tourism, and our historic and heavy reliance on high summer trade levels to generate the income to carry our businesses through the quieter winter months. Realistically speaking, many business owners were heavily impacted during the Whirianga Main Street upgrade 2 years ago, when retailers and other businesses were forced to find alternative financial options to survive the shutdown of our Main Street. And many of these retailers are still working relentlessly to pay off either debts or financing instigated during that time. Compounding that pressure, they are now faced with the impact of the COVID-19 lockdown and the financial and emotional effect of the current situation. The best guess that we have currently is that there is no end in sight to the current shutdown of our international borders, and that regional travel remains elusive, thereby placing a very real ambiguity and uncertainty into an already challenging environment. Every business owner we speak to is scaling back the size of their operations to keep their business alive and, where possible, to continue to support their staff, many of whom are cared for as extended family. However, staff members are being laid off, hours are being cut and significantly reduced. And we have business owners that are telling us that even when they are able to open, it might not be for the 7 days a week per their history, and thus impacting the entire business and social dimensions of the community as a whole. Renovations, extensions, or scaling up of their business has been put on hold indefinitely. The recent increase to the minimum wage, which, based on the high cost of living, is an absolute necessity, means many businesses were already having to think strategically about their future and their staffing levels. Many landlords have already put a rent freeze in place to assist the business community to simply survive through the COVID-19 shutdown. However, this is not a sustainable long-term solution. Every change in our economy carries a consequence and creates a domino effect, some larger than others. On the surface, the proposed rate increase does not reflect a massive jump to the residential properties, but it will have an impact on those homeowners who are now unable to provide for themselves as they may have previously. The increase on commercial properties is a whole different story, and commercial property owners have no choice but to pass this increase on to their tenants, thus creating a double hit for local residents who both lease commercial property and own residential property. We are aware that some retailers are currently making plans to exit their retail spaces. Empty retail stores do not encourage tourism or local spending, and a strong economic region needs people spending at every level locally. Local council now more than ever need to tighten their own belts and become self-reliant, releasing excessive expenditure on out-of-town consultants and utilize the expertise that lives already within our region. Local council need to demonstrate how to lead the change required in our communities and also need to reflect the true reality of our region. There are a number of projects in the proposed draft annual plan that must be revisited based on the current economic climate. Non-essential planned capital expenditure must be negated. Fiscal responsibility for a project management lies at the heart of the responsible management in any business, including council. Now is the time that council must analyse, assess and refocus on the critical priorities that provide the best possible blueprint to drive our growth through this economic crisis and build a new, revitalised sense of community by building pride in our ability to do what it takes to come out the other side with strength, confidence and a renewed conviction in our own ability to solve our own problems. The draft annual plan was developed with a different environment, and under the current global and local crisis, there is no other responsible action other than to revise and reshape it urgently and accordingly to our new current reality. The Thames-Coromandel District Council has an opportunity right now to show empathy and compassion and become a shining example to other district councils and business leaders to demonstrate visibly and powerfully how to work collaboratively, smartly and efficiently to deliver on its own economic development plan by investing wisely, supporting their communities in a time of crisis, prioritising sharply on real urgent needs and building a relevant change adept business community. Thank you.
Thank you, Milan. And firstly, can I just say, I'm very impressed with how you grasped this so quickly for the Mercury Bay Business Association, and we're backing businesses right from the get-go. Firstly, can I just ask you, in light of the COVID and the effect on business, and we're really focused, your focus is predominantly on business and we support that, but do you think we should be lobbying for level 2 now and for all businesses to be open? It's a little outside the scope of the annual plan, but it's a question I'd be interested in the answer to. Absolutely. I mean, I empathise with the decisions government has to make on this because it's a really tricky scale to balance. Yes. I think there are geographic regions where the case is stronger than others. Sure, should the likes of Tairāwhiti, Coromandel and other places be open? Probably yes. Should the likes of the big city centres, Auckland, Hamilton, Wellington, they're probably not just yet. One of the biggest problems with level 2 is New Zealand, and especially our coastal communities like the Mercury Bay, rely heavily on tourism, be it domestic or internationally. So while level 2 will free up the community to maybe get out and live more of a normal life in terms of supporting local businesses and whatnot, we still at the moment have guidance in the current level 2 restrictions of discouraging interregional travel. And it means businesses like us out here still can't benefit from the Aucklanders coming down and spending their money here. Locals are not going to use the glass bottom boat and they're not going to use all these other services because they've already got a boat, or a friend that's got a boat. So we really need those travel restrictions looked at versus the actual levels, which will make a really big difference out here. Thank you. I appreciate that. Do any of the other councillors have a question?
Yes, so it's Martin here. I have a question just about the effect on businesses. Like we hear anecdotally that there are businesses that make a considerable amount of their income over the summer months and then use that to, if you like, sort of subsidise themselves for the rest of the year. How much of that has been disrupted this year in your...
Yeah, I mean, it's at this moment really difficult to gauge because we've come off a really good summer, and a lot of businesses have what was the sort of, icing on top of the cake that they've now been dipping into. It's once we've opened the doors that we can understand how business is going to recover is when we'll be able to understand how badly that's going to be affected.
Right.
Yeah, so
Thank you, Martin.
For a lot of businesses, it is a waiting game and trying to see what's going to happen. It's still a lot of uncertainty for everyone out there.
Okay, thank you.
That's right. Thank you, Martin. Anyone else have a question? There being none. Milan, thank you so much. Really appreciate your input today. Thank you. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you, Sandra Gardy. Everyone else.
Right, now invite Joyce Birdsall, page 66 for both copies. Joyce, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're welcome.
Good. Thank you. That was an extremely good submission and quite a hard act to follow, I must say. So congratulations to the Whitianga business people. I think that was great. Yesterday I spent quite a lot of time reading through the submissions of other people, and I'm sure others speaking before me have also emphasised, and you must all know as well, the economic impact of COVID-19 on households will be significant. So many businesses on the peninsula are based on tourism, which will take years to recover, and many will lose their jobs. Our retirees have also reduced incomes as their investments are impacted. This is not the time to impose further costs on ratepayers. As you'll be aware from my submission, I would have opposed a 10% rate increase before we were confronted with COVID-19. However, now more than ever, Council must reconsider this increase and look to make in-house savings and reduce unnecessary spending on nice-to-have projects. Councils are not any different from other businesses. It's time to get back to basics, reduce salaries as other councils and businesses have done, and put a halt to all non-essential activities. Rather than asking ratepayers what projects we'd like to see cut, I would have preferred a budget from council stating these are the projects we can delay or cancel to cover the 10% projected increase, rather than asking ratepayers to do their work for you. It's pretty obvious that the essential services are required. Catering to tourists is not, nor are town upgrades, new walkways, toilet upgrades, and other such services. I also thought that this was not the time to be tinkering with changes to fees and to charges. I think that's something that should be done through the next LTP, and I include in that the consultation about uniform annual general charge, the cost of rubbish bags. Those sorts of things usually are addressed in my memory through the LTP and not through the annual plan process. And those extra changes in costs will not make up for a 10% or come anywhere near covering the 10% increase that you're talking about. So I hope you'll listen to those people who've taken the time to submit and to speak to you today. And please show some compassion and some concern for your ratepayers who are already hurting quite badly. Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. Does anyone have any questions for Joyce? There being none, appreciate that. Thank you very much, Joyce. We do have your written submission. So thank you. Appreciate you being in line today.
Thank you.
So we'll move to Dennis Teague, page 441 of the hard copy and page 453 of the online copy. Dennis, welcome to the forum.
Yes, thanks, Ms. Sandra, and hello to your councillors. Some introductory remarks. I think you've done really well to organise this in the midst of this crisis, and I congratulate you on that. I think what it does show is that remote video conferencing is an option in the future, and maybe we can save some costs and emissions by not travelling around so much. But that's another issue, I suppose. I'd also like to say I don't envy your task for several reasons. I mean, there's a backlog, obviously, of spending on infrastructure, especially through waters, and the government pushes new responsibilities onto local government and doesn't match that with funding. And then you've seen the pressure from the public for a zero rate increase. And then on the other hand, you've got Minister Twyford warning that if you do go down to zero or significantly reduce your rates, then that calls into question whether the government will assist with funding. So, and then we're in maybe a 100-year recession or even a depression, and there's genuine hardship. So, I mean, that's a pretty difficult minefield to navigate. So I don't envy your task, but I think what I'd say for a start is maybe the way to start is by agreeing on the principles that guide your decision making. And I'm not going to suggest what they should be to you, but we've gone through a similar process for the Regional Council, and I think it was a really good way to sort of, concentrate your thinking. But one thing I would mention is I think, for example, you should seriously consider about how you target relief for rates for those in genuine hardship. And I think that would mean a review of your rate relief policy. And I know that you now use the government scheme, but for example, Hamilton City Council has an expanded scheme of their own, which complements the government one. And so you can target relief to those who really need it. And that way you actually give the council some wriggle room to have rate increases for those who continue to be gainfully employed or otherwise are able to afford the rates. So some people will actually continue to be able to afford. I thought I'd just move on to priorities and how I'd rank them. And the first one I would say is a need to upgrade and make compliant all of your council's 3 water infrastructure. And I'm not sure that all councillors are aware, but there are abatement notices issued for illegal and serious discharges and other breaches of consent for at least 4 council wastewater plants. And this non-compliance has been ongoing for many years. And in January, for example, there was an outbreak of botulism at the Thames wastewater plant that killed thousands of birds. And in fact, council is well down the track to being prosecuted if it doesn't take urgent action. In addition to that, there are many community water supplies and stormwater infrastructure, which is pretty dodgy. And the government's fast-track law change for the RMA specifically mentions 3 waters infrastructure. So I'm just suggesting if the council can get its ducks in a row by demonstrating a commitment to upgrade these plants and also community water supplies and stormwater, they might be in a better position for fast-tracking these projects and secure stimulus funding. Similarly, there are 10 closed coastal landfills that are at risk from sea level rise and inundation, and the government has said very plainly they don't want another Fox River disaster. So again, I'm suggesting you make that work a priority. And unsurprisingly to many, I suppose, I'm urging you to retain the Thames Connector bus service and extend the contract for 1 year from this month. And beyond that, make provision in your long-term plan for an extended service from 2021, which could link Coromandel, Thames, Tairua and Whangamata, and maybe even Paira and Ngatea. And I just let you know that through Regional Council, a business case for that is being worked on collaboratively with local communities. So just to remember, government provides 50% funding for public transport, just as it does for local roads, and that's a core service. And these essential services can be provided pretty cheaply with low emission vehicles which operate on a demand basis. And that's something new that's happening in the space. And Hamilton City Council, for example, is already moving many of its urban bus services to demand responsive. So rather than a fixed timetable, you can ring up on an 0800 number or your cell phone and basically book a small vehicle that'll come to your door. So I'm just flagging those as future options that I think will be really well received. And we've all experienced social isolation during the lockdown, and now maybe we can better appreciate what social isolation looks like for hundreds, if not thousands, of elders and others who don't have transport options. So again, in terms of your guiding principles, I would urge you to always consider the 4 well-beings, which are now required to be considered under the Local Government Act. In terms of savings, I would say, and I think others have touched on this, that in the midst of a maybe 100-year recession, upgrading the Thames CBD is an extravagance. And we saw multi-million cost overruns for Whitianga. And I'd suggest instead take advantage of the 90% funding available from central government for the Innovative Streets project to upgrade cycling and walking infrastructure. And now that's been done to help maintain social distancing, but also to capitalise on the benefits the public have seen from much quieter streets and safer streets and less pollution and active transport. In addition to that, of course, Council is carrying out its shoreline management work, and there's a New Zealand-wide study called NZC Rise, which is looking at vertical land movement and sea level rise for Thames, likely to be a special test case. So I'm suggesting it would be foolish in the extreme to spend millions of dollars on a town upgrade before that research has been completed. And I would say the same issues apply to the sub-regional aquatic centre at Totara. And I'd urge you to look for a safer alternative site. And finally, in terms of increased revenue, I'd suggest that given the water shortages in Whitianga and other towns, it's a no-brainer to install water meters for towns that don't have them, to require on-site water storage as a condition of consent for new subdivisions, and maybe look at levying Airbnb type accommodation to encourage more long-term housing rentals. So I'll leave it there. As I say at the beginning, I don't envy your task. It's obviously very difficult. I have some sense of that in my new role, and I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Are there any questions of Dennis, please?
Yeah, I've got a question. Terry Walker in Whangamata, Dennis.
Yeah, hi, Terry.
The words, so I will take those on board. I understand 2 questions really. Does the Regional Council going to freeze rates for this year because of COVID-19? The second question, is there any consideration to targeted rates being discussed as being some relief?
The first part of your question, the Regional Council has signalled a 0 rate increase. That's not locked in, but staff have been asked to go away and try and achieve that objective. And I can tell you there's been a wee bit of pushback in some areas. I won't go into what they are, but there's some that are seen as core Regional Council services where I don't think we'll be able to achieve that with a 0 rate increase. So it's still up in the air whether we'll get there, but it's certainly the aim is to do that. In terms of targeted rates, I'm not quite sure I understand the question. Maybe you could rephrase it for me.
Well, there's areas and targets rates. One in Whangamata, as you know, is I think it's a $15 targeted rate on the mangroves still to be paid, even though the job was finished in 2018 till 2023. Right. And obviously there's some up at other targeted rate areas around the Coromandel, which most probably feeling the pressure of this current situation and wonder if there'd be any relief provided for those.
There's been no discussion on that, would be my short answer, no.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Are there any other questions of Dennis? There being none, thank you very much, Dennis. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
It has been a good session having the hearings online like this. It has been very good experience so far. Very good. Thank you.
And maybe we can do it more in the future. Cheers.
Oh, I think so. Absolutely. Thank you very much indeed. Now, the next one is Roger Buchanan, but I understand he might be having a bit of difficulty. So, Roger, no. So what we'll do is we'll go to Brian Dixon, who I understand is with us, page 185 of the hard copy, page 197 of the online copy. Brian, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I live most of my time in Dunedin, so this is a real advantage in not having to come up to the Coromandel to present. I really appreciate that, although I would have loved to have been locked down at our place in the Coromandel. I'm going to share a screen for you because it adds to the comments that I've put in the online submission, if that's okay.
Yeah, it's absolutely fine.
Find where that is.
Can't guarantee we'll all get it.
Yep. I did send a copy to Anahira just in case.
That's fine.
Although this is amended just slightly. Okay, so I've had a fairly long association, being rather grey or white of hair since the 60s with the Coromandel. We have property there as a family, and I've been visiting every year since I was 9 and spend as much time as I possibly can where I can do my business. I'm actually a clinical psychologist by training, and my wife Judy is a nurse. And we hope to be moving to the peninsula within the next couple or more years. I've got a lot of experience in climate change issues. I'm part of a major international network of psychologists around the world who are looking at how psychology can help address climate problems, that is in terms of behaviour issues, behaviour change and so on. And I chair the Psychological Society's Climate Psychology Task Force. Coming to my submission, the proposed increase to rates, I'm echoing what others have said about the 10% increase being unacceptable. And echoing what Dennis has just said, that if there is any rates increase, then the TCDC clearly will have to look at how it can deliver the rates relief to property owners and business operators who've been affected by the current pandemic crisis. Because of that crisis, I think that the council does need to go back to the drawing board and look at what's really essential, what can be deferred, and what else might now be needed. My feeling is that the TCDC needs to focus on projects that provide better services for people in the district, and echoing other people's comments on that, that projects should be looked at that provide really meaningful work and building on those services that will particularly assist the community recovery in a way that maintains the incredibly valuable social and environmental features of the Coromandel. My long-standing interest has been in the protection of significant natural areas and significant landscapes, and I have to admit a bit of a conflict of interest in that our property sits overlooking part of the Coromandel Forest Park out towards Otama. Mineral exploration is something that causes people a lot of anxiety in that and other communities, and I feel it is a direct threat to the significant values of forest properties of our coast and coastal resources. Also, because I look across one of the most pristine kauri forests, mostly regenerated but not entirely regenerated, I really feel that we need to have much more effort in terms of kauri dieback eradication if we can, but certainly controls. It really does concern me that people come up with sometimes quite bizarre proposals that would threaten to introduce kauri dieback into that wonderful piece of low-lying kauri forest. In terms of climate change preparedness, we've seen increasingly severe events over the years and more frequent, with sometimes 50 or 100-year events coming around within 5 to 10 years, second time. We have a very long and vulnerable coastline and probably the longest of any of the territorial authorities in New Zealand, apart from Westland, I think. And we need to be working with NZTA to determine how we can protect both that asset and the roading asset. State Highway 25 being very prone to the storm events and costing a lot of council funds to remedy. In terms of the long-term plan, there was a question about that, and I really have reiterated there that we really need to look at how, as a social source of worry, the threat of mining is a major issue for people in the Coromandel. It's not something that seems to be compatible or that I've ever felt was compatible with the well-being of the people of the Coromandel. And I used to go to the court in the 80s about mining proposals at that time, and we're still doing that now and should be spared of that. And also in terms of long-term planning, climate action and preparedness is essential in my view. There was a question about increasing revenue now or in the future. There are opportunities with such low interest rates to increase borrowing, particularly with a crisis such as we have. And some areas are talking about borrowing from future generations to protect what has been protected for us, and making sure that we have a major social investment in the well-being of people in the Coromandel. A central government's going to be offering funding, and I suggest that that is something that the TCDC needs to be embracing and looking at how it can apply appropriately. The fees and charges, I think they are quite significant, the proposals there, and I think that simply defers costs because people start dumping more frequently in areas in our pristine and rural areas, and that's just a deferred cost. It just pushes it onto our general rates. So I think it is not a good time to increase those charges. Generally, I think it's clear that the imperative's now shifted with the COVID crisis to ensure that councils attend to safety, well-being, financial security of their people, all their people. What was being assumed when the annual plan was put together may now no longer apply, and priorities then are less important. So particularly a 10% increase would seem to be not feasible, not fair. I thought it'd be useful, having said that I think things should be done, to come up with a little bit of a list of things that might be helpful to think about for long-term transition. So partnering with, that should say iwi, NZTA. So if you can just, I think partnerships with iwi is incredibly important. Elevation of the State Highway 25 surface. So this has been happening in Dunedin, around Dunedin, Otago Peninsula, lifting by 2 or 3 metres above the current level as a long-term protection. Eradicating pests, improving walkways and protection of the forests. Replanting of native species on roadsides and reserves. Improving our coastal waters and increasing our wetlands. Enhancing the waterways, and Dennis spoke at more length on that than me in more detail and more knowledgeably. Climate action, there are a whole lot of things that TCDC could be doing now and looking at sources for support for collaborative schemes around energy conservation and savings, looking at subsidies for, and loans for people to implement savings and new measures, efficiency measures. Planting trees, raising the coast levels, installing water storage. So Dennis touched on this. I think this should be something that we should be encouraging for everybody. Crises with water are partly made by us because people rely on treated water supplies. Just simply having tank storage for runoff of winter water and storage for summer measures for everybody that we can encourage to do that would be incredibly good. And then community wellbeing and prosperity projects, so partnering with iwi, central government, regional government and industries to try and enhance the social environment opportunities for suitable small businesses and the human services. One of the things, there will be government support, and I know the Mayor of Dunedin is asking for that to extend to looking at assistance to put in housing for those who need low rent alternatives. And that seems a really good investment of that money for the future of any district. Giving rates relief for positive ventures and trying to prevent the destructive ones. Encouraging internal tourism, New Zealand tourism, when that's able to happen. And Dennis touched on better public transport services into and around the peninsula. And also offering less expensive activities to get a wider range of New Zealanders actually coming in into the Coromandel. And looking at support for a wide range of events, particularly as when we approach the summer, concerts, festivals, shows, conferences and sports. Not building stadiums, but promoting events, I think, and supporting those. And also looking at the special features that we have in our small communities. Things like crafts, local produce, and recreational pursuits in those centres. And there are thriving, wonderful small communities throughout the Coromandel that I think deserve to be assisted. Just trying to work out how to go back from this. How do I unshare? Anybody know that? Where's my shared window? Am I back?
You're still online in front. I can still see you, so you're still there.
Shared screen gone?
No, it's still there. That's all right. Don't worry about it.
Okay, I don't want it to stay through others though. Ah, here we go. Stop presenting. There we go. There we are. So yeah, a few of my thoughts there.
Okay. So are you open for questions now?
Yes, certainly.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Does anybody have any questions of Brian?
Yes, of course. It's Robin here. Brian, it was a great presentation, lots of really interesting information in there. And I see that you have eradication of pests. And did you imagine that as being an entire peninsula pest-free, or did you imagine sort of targeted control like at Whenua-Kite or the Kiwi sanctuary up here at Te Mata? Did you have any ideas?
Yeah, I think in a total eradication aim is probably not feasible and viable, and we could actually be wasting some of our resources in doing that. But targeted pest eradication is possible. We trap possums, rats, and we've had pigs on our property and our goats. Those sorts of species and cats, these are common problems for the native flora and fauna that we need to really be moving on. A good example of what's happening elsewhere in the country, in our own, where I am, Otago Peninsula, the pest eradication has meant that mustelids and possums and rats and cats are really well managed, almost eliminated from this area. And I think we can do it on a larger scale, but it's a major undertaking, and we'd really only do it with DOC's help.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you, Brian. Are there any other questions of Brian? There being none, Brian, can you send through your submission, your added submission that you shared on screen with us, please?
Certainly, yeah, I have sent it, but I've got a slightly amended one, so I'll send that through.
That would be great. Thank you very
so
much
for the opportunity, and like Dennis, I don't envy you your task. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
No, but it's great that you could come to the hearing all the way from Dunedin. So well done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Right.
Now we have Roger Buchanan now with us, and Roger's submission is on page 104. So Roger, welcome.
Hi.
Hi, Roger.
Hi. I am really disgusted with the big rate increase that TC's decided to do. And without prejudice, I believe that all re-elected members of council should do the honourable thing and resign from council because of their gross financial mismanagement of council funds. If these councillors did not know about the council's financial position before the election, they should have. Where is the transparency from council to ratepayers. The TCDC must rebudget, starting with withdrawing all expenditure which is not core issue. Once this has been achieved, then all other expenditure must be prioritised until the expenditure meets rate takes plus inflation. This is simple budgeting. Why am I, a ratepayer, having to tell council this? Core services, of course, are water supplies, sewerage, waste collection, roading, footpaths, stormwater, and emergency services. So why has council allowed itself to get into this position?
Have you finished your submission, Roger?
Yes.
Okay, right. Well, I'll ask if the councillors have any questions of you. Councillors, do you have any questions? There being none, is there anything further you wanted to add, Roger?
No, I'm just so disappointed in the TCDC council. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Appreciate your time. So we'll now go to John Hillary, hard copy page 136 or online copy page 138. John, are you with us?
I'll be there. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can, and we can see you. Thank you very much, John.
So what happens now? Do I speak, do I?
Yes, you have the screen. You might want to tilt your device so that it can see all of you. That's it. Thank you very much indeed. Now we've got work. That'll do. Yep. Got you.
You must be sure there's something good to look at. Yeah. Now this, as you know, I come from a corporate background. Yes. And slightly more dog eat dog than the average kind of attitudes. But the proposed rate increase is a problem for many residents who only live off super. We tried to levy our street for some capital expenditure on our own water scheme of $300 each, and we had 4 people out of 40 who just couldn't find the $300. So I don't know how those people are going to find a 9% rate increase year on year. We in Seaview Avenue in Te Puru don't have much services from the TCDC other than waste management and the park grass mowing and the library. We don't have a footpath on our side of the road. We provide our own sewerage and we've got our own cooperative water supply, which is very good, by the way. We get good water. We also have to mow the grass on the TCDC reserve between the coastline and our boundary. This is something we've been doing for a long time. And as I'm getting older, I'm now going to have to pay to get somebody to mow the TCDC reserve, and that doesn't go down too well. After the big flood, we got no help. We had to clean up the debris on our property, well, on the reserve ourselves, and the Thames-Coromandel Council has been conspicuously absent. The next point is, how did we get into such a mess? Most of the inflationary tendencies in the past few years have been 2 to 3% for business, and this seems to be a very large percentage more than that. Just getting really pointy-toothed, in any reasonably sized business, if we had this situation, I know in my own situation, working for a large corporate group, and it happened to a general manager above me, we didn't make budget profit one year as a group, and he didn't have a job within 4 hours of that being announced. So I think there's need to get some people in there who can do it and keep control of the costs properly. This is an appearance to us because we don't know the internal workings of what goes on. It's just what it appears to be like. So in any reasonable sized business, the senior management staff and the directors would be down the road by now. No messing around at all. No reason why we can't look at some reshuffle of the councillors and the senior management of this council. Going back to the increase, it means that you will get the money that otherwise these pension people and many others would spend in Pollen Street and in the Goldfields Mall. So there's going to be a shortage of money for those people, or a decrease in the purchasing power of the public. So it's quite reasonable to expect reductions of salaries from senior staff and councillors in the process of getting efficient. On the plus side, I have found dealing with the Thames staff, council staff, to be pleasant, and they're very, very polite and pleasant. So yeah, there's some good stuff there as well. My attitude to the council is that they should be providing essential services to the community, not picking and choosing which industries they want to market. Nobody from the council ever marketed the company I was operating, neither did we really want them to. It's up to industries, particularly the tourist industry, to market themselves. We mustn't allow the coronavirus issue to cloud this matter. There were problems before that, and they have to be addressed. The coronavirus thing is entirely separate to this submission. So on the looking at it, I did say something about dogs, and there's too many of them anyway, but I hope the council hasn't got any subsidy going towards the operation of looking after the dogs from the dog licence. I hope the dog licence is sufficient to pay for all the goings on that go with pounds and chasing dogs and all the rest of it. So the only matter I would raise is that I don't believe in Father Christmas. If we're going to do all these marvellous things that everybody in their submissions wants to do, you either have to have a rate increase, or you have to decrease the cost of the operation, and I prefer the latter. I think there's always room for cost reduction in any business, so I'm sure the council's no different. So, in short, I've only got one plea to the council. Can you please make sure that the green waste part of the tip is open, because I'm sick of seeing people dumping their stuff on the foreshore. That's where it's going. So the sooner we get the green waste under control, maybe it's open, I haven't heard, I don't know. But I've got a lot to do and I'm saving it. But I can tell you that that's where it's going. That's where the green waste is going. So thank you for the opportunity. That's it.
Thank you, John. Really appreciate it. And I'm pretty sure the green waste is now accepted at the transfer station. So I'll just open it up to the councillors. And are there any questions of John? There being none. John, thank you very much for taking the time. It's great to be able to share it with you this way. So thank you. And next time, if there's a civil defence emergency, give me a call. I'll come and help you clean up your road frontage.
Good. Don't forget to bring some hard gloves. I hate to saw your fingernails.
It's all right. My fingernails are blunt.
They are.
I don't do that sort of thing. Okay, thank you so much, John. Really appreciate it.
Righto.
We now have Amanda Sewell, page 163 of the hard copy or page 175 of the online copy. Amanda, are you with us? Is Amanda Sewell with us?
Yes, I am, Sandra. Good afternoon to you and the councillors.
Good, great to have you on board, Amanda. So you're free to go.
Thank you very much. My name is Amanda Sewell, and my family has been living in Whitianga for many generations. I have seen the many changes that have occurred to our small coastal village. The population growth in the last 10 years has been massive, and it's very obvious that the infrastructure is having major problems dealing with us. In my submission, I have listed the capital works that need to be changed or reviewed, but my priorities are water. Obviously, through this drought over the summer, we have had a major problem all over the peninsula, but we need something done to our water supply. We have to start thinking about recycling all the water sources that are available to us, stormwater, grey water, and bring in compulsory water storage for new house builds all over the peninsula, all over the North Island probably, and rubbish, solid waste. We have to find ways to recycle all of our so-called rubbish. We need to address the building industry and tell them to sharpen up their act. All recycling building rubbish, and it has to be minimised, what is trying to be discarded instead of just being thrown at the dump. We could recycle bottles. They can be used in concrete and roading and things like that. We need a recycling facility at the Whitianga Refuse Station. We need to seriously think about recycling green waste. This could create jobs in the making of compost, potting mix, etc. It's a major commodity that is used by so many people, and it could be very, very lucrative for the community. There has been major overspending in the town upgrade, and it seems such a sad thing that it started to look very grubby. Rusty rubbish bins, and these are leaching onto the nice white tiles. There's grass growing through tiles. The care has just gone to the pack. The non-essential capital work spending has to be majorly reviewed and prioritised, and many capital projects may have to be delayed, shelved or discarded completely. How has the spending got so out of hand? Who's meant to be checking to make sure that we're not overspending? Looking into the future, I think that we should reinstate the Reserves Management Group that is run by locals. I was involved in the reinstatement of the Robinson Road Reserve after the macrocarpers were cut down and assisted in the replantings. My partner and I are residents of Robinson Road and live adjacent to the reserve. I have spoken to many users and other residents, and they are mostly against the development of a Hogan path like the one along the main beachfront of Whitianga. I know that this is not on the schedule at this time, but talking about savings, we could take this future development off the schedule and it'll save an estimated $500,000. I'm sure that there are many other savings that could be made as well. If we can keep all the works to a minimum for this foreseeable future, then we should be able to cover the proposed rates increase. Our community here in Whitianga is comprised of retired people, small businesses which rely on tourism, and young families who will find any rates increase very, very damaging. And that's all I've got to say, Sandra. Thank you for your time and good luck with your decision making.
Thank you, Amanda, and thank you for the list and recommendations out of your submission as well. I'll just see if there are any councillors wanting to ask any questions. Any questions from the councillors? There don't appear to be any. So thank you very much, Amanda. Appreciate it. Appreciate your time.
And thank you, Sandra. Have a great afternoon.
You too. Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye. Ken. We now have Ken Coolum, page 118. Are you there, Ken? You with us, Ken? Turn on your sound.
Yeah, turn on the
Excellent.
sound. Got that?
We got you.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, Mayor Sandra and councillors. I'll try and keep this succinct because I realise you've got a lot to get through today and you seem to be running slightly behind. But this submission is...
No, you're right. Fine.
Okay.
Yeah, you're absolutely fine.
Okay.
You're the last one for us today.
Oh, good. 2 hours in.
No, I shouldn't have said that. No, it's all right. I just didn't want you to rush unnecessarily. I wanted you just to
thanks for clarifying that. Now, this submission is in my own name because the Whangamata Community Board didn't have an opportunity to formally put in a submission. we did have some informal discussion at a workshop. So while some of this is based on what the board discussed and has supported most of the board, it is in my own name. Just like to touch on a few key points. Firstly, the UAGC, it doesn't produce any extra revenue, and I feel this should be revisited next year as part of the long-term plan when we get the new property values and see what's happening there. So if we can hold off on doing that at this stage, I think that would be a wise move. Recognise the challenges that the council's facing in these trying times, and certainly when the draft plan was adopted, none of us could foresee what was happening. So on one hand, you've got a rate increase that many in the community can't afford, but on the other hand, you need to provide the essential services and support the local economy by delivering the projects as promised. So that's a balancing act, which is going to be a bit of a dilemma for the council to address. The projects that are already underway in the current year, such as the Wentworth Valley Road reseal, they need to be carried forward and completed before we start on next year's program. So there's going to be pressure on resource, both in time and in terms of staff resources, etc. So, I'd say do what we promised to do this year. If projects have to be dropped or postponed, look at next year's program rather than those that are sort of shovel ready or already underway. Whangamata doesn't have a large local project list. In fact, it's less than 2% of the total CapEx list. And I'm not looking to add any new items into there, but there are things we'd love to have seen in there, but we're just going to have to hold off to a later date when the economy is better. So, things like better stormwater, more public toilets, some freedom camping provision. Realise that that's not the time to start promoting those, but we'll hold fire on those till later down the track. Tourism's an issue for New Zealand, especially international tourism. I think the domestic tourism, once we get down to level 2 and level 1, is going to be a bit of a saviour for the peninsula. In terms of Whangamata, most of our tourism, I'd say probably 90% is domestic of one way or another. And if we can get that back to where it was, especially get events like Beach Hop up and running again, that's going to be vital for the businesses in town. We're a bit fortunate that the coronavirus kicked in after we got through a very good summer, so hopefully that's given the businesses a bit of time to try and get them through this period that we're going into now. One area of council that I think is possibly needing some additional resources in the economic development team, because businesses this year and next year into the future are going to be needing some assistance and advice to help them through that. And I think that there is a role there for the economic development team to help that recovery, which is going to be a year or two. Who knows how long that's going to be. In my submission, I mentioned the information centre. You can scrub that out. I now understand we're not going to need any additional resources into that. So you can forget what I said there. Waste management continues to be a challenge. I've heard that mentioned by a couple of submitters while I've been sitting here. Be good to have a seagull centre in Whangamata, like I believe is very successful over in Thames, because there's a lot of good stuff just goes into the tip and into the landfill. So certainly if that could be done in a cost neutral way in Whangamata, I think it's something that the board and the community would really support. I'm also concerned that bags are going up 39% this year. That's quite a large increase, and I'm concerned that it might result in some illegal dumping. We already get illegal dumping now, and if it goes up 39%, that's going to actually not help that situation. So if there's some way that deficit in the waste management can be perhaps incorporated into the general rates somewhat to help prevent that happening. Finally, I'd welcome any downward movement in the rates. I know the 9.98 was done in earlier days, but if that could be halved or less, I'm sure the community would really welcome that. I wish you well in your task. I don't envy you it. It's going to be a tricky balancing act. So good luck with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. And can I just ask about the Seagull Centre? They are great, but the Seagull Centre is run in Thames independently, and so is the one in Coromandel Town. Would the community board look at rustling up a volunteer group to establish one that works within your waste collection in Whangamata, and you could do that under the guidance of the Seagull Centre in Thames. So they ran it as a trust. So it was community driven. I don't know whether the board's looked at seeing if they could generate that sort of interest in your community.
Thank you, Your Worship. There has been only initial discussion at this stage, but there is quite a few in the community that would support it, and the community's been great for volunteering in the past for a number of things, and I'm sure if we looked at the models that have worked in other parts of the district, we'd be happy to look at that and see if we get something up and running further down the track.
Yeah. And then the other question I have is that I understand that docks now come to the party, so I guess you wouldn't want to be seeing the Wentworth Valley Road ceiling drop then.
No, definitely not. I realise it won't be all completed this year, but no, we certainly don't want that one dropped. We'd hate to let some dock money go unspent.
I couldn't resist. Sorry. No, I know. That's a bit of a major, that. What a coup. Anyway, look, I'll just better ask the councillors. Ken is our last submitter for the day, so do you have any questions of Ken? So there are none. So Ken, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And yes, we've got a job to do, all right. So thank you. Really appreciate your time today. And it's been great to be able to do this online.
That is a great thing, and I'd like to encourage the council to do more of this online business. Saves driving over that bloody hill.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree, and that's been one of the positives out of the current difficult situation. If you look at the different things that have happened that could be turned into a benefit, this is one of them.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah. No, that's to be encouraged. Okay. Thank you very much. Good luck.
Thank you. Okay, so thank you everyone, and we'll see you tomorrow at 8:30 a.m. Thank you, everybody.
Can I just thank the staff that have made this happen? It's Sally here. Because I'm sure there's been an enormous amount of work to get us to this point. So thank them very much. Yeah.
Yep. Martin here. I'll just echo that. It's been great.
We all appreciate it. So Ariana, will you pass that on to everybody if not everybody's here participating?
Yes, I'm happy to do that. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Great work. Well done, everyone.